Hi, this is Dr. Tom Charlton. I'm the Regional Director of EMS for U.S. Acute Care Solutions in the Cincinnati market, and I'm also Medical Director for several of the fire departments in the area. I was asked to make a quick video kind of explaining the various vaccines that are available or should be available very soon for fire and EMS. The good news is there was some successful lobbying at the national level, and it appears that firefighters who also do EMS are going to be included in the Tier 1A, which means we are now going to be the top people to get vaccinated first. That means that we're on the exact same level as everybody at the hospitals, all the healthcare workers, etc. So that's a really good thing. Initially, we were actually going to be a Tier 3, which means we were far lower down in the immunization priorities. But we were able to successfully lobby at the national level to get the CDC to change their guidance. So we know right now that there are two vaccines that are likely going to be coming out for emergency use authorization here soon. Moderna and Pfizer have the ones that appear to be coming out the soonest. Right now, both of them have submitted for emergency use authorization. And what that means is that in a situation like we currently are having, we can't go through the full normal medication approval process. That process in and of itself usually takes multiple years. To put things in perspective, the fastest vaccine that's been developed previous to this was mumps, which took about 4 years. Influenza vaccines we're able to develop faster because we already have an influenza vaccine. We're just simply changing some of the way that the virus is loaded into the system. So it's not necessarily coming up with a new vaccine. We're just tweaking the recipe a little bit. With this is the fastest we've ever developed a vaccine. However, we have done it very safely. There are multiple fail-safes built into the system, and it is still undergoing regulatory approval. The other nice thing is it's going through the same process around the world. And so multiple other regulatory bodies are independently looking at this. The vaccines that thus far have been sent out for emergency use authorization have also been submitted to other regulatory bodies. And in fact, in the UK just recently, I believe it was the Pfizer vaccine was recently granted their equivalent of an emergency use authorization. The Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are a new type of vaccine. Typically, we use live attenuated vaccines or viral components or protein-derived type vaccines. And that's worked for over a century. However, back in the early 2000s, we had another virus that was very similar to the one that we have now, SARS. What happened with that is we had to very quickly develop some technology so that we could begin combating this, because we weren't sure if there was going to be a pandemic as a result of that vaccine, which again was novel. We had never seen it before. There was no immunity in the population for it. So what happened is we began developing this technology called mRNA. What that means is instead of us using protein that we have to separate from the virus and figure out what it does and that kind of thing, we're essentially using the blueprints that lives within the virus in order to fight the virus itself. All of us carry around DNA, and DNA is our blueprint. mRNA is one of the types of blueprints that are used. So if you think of DNA lives within the nucleus of the cell and is the master plan. It contains all the information needed to make us. RNA is a copy of that. mRNA is one of the specific copies of it, and it's the copy that allows the machinery within your cell to actually produce proteins. So both of these vaccines are relying upon the mRNA, that blueprint, to tell our cells to make the spike protein, which is one of the proteins that is on the outside of the coronavirus that allows it to attach and make entry into our cells. So instead of us isolating the spike protein and then trying to massively produce it, et cetera, so that we can then give people a vaccine the traditional way. We are instead using this technology where instead we're going to be injected with mRNA from this. And that mRNA in and of itself is not going to trigger an immune response. That mRNA is going to be getting into our cells, and our machinery is essentially going to begin producing this spike protein. The nice thing is that the cells are going to immediately recognize that this is not one of our proteins, that this is a foreign invader, and begin mounting an immune response to it, just like it does whenever we get infected with a new cold virus or a new influenza virus. The same thing is occurring within our cells in those situations. It's just it's being delivered by a virus instead of by a shot. The good news is that this mRNA very quickly begins to degrade, just like photocopies do. If you take them, and print them off, the copies begin to degrade, etc. You cannot get a permanent, infection from this. There is no live coronavirus that's being injected into you. It's literally one of the several hundred proteins present within the virus itself. There's no way for this mRNA to somehow alter your DNA. In fact, it can't even get into the nucleus. The nucleus is extremely well protected. mRNA does not make its way in there. And so you're not going to grow a third leg or anything like that. So let's talk a little bit about kind of what to expect with these vaccines. Because this is a new virus for all of us, we are going to have a more pronounced immune response to this than we have with other things. Just like if you get a new bug for the first time, you may get super sick. The next couple of times that you get exposed to it, you may not get nearly as sick. We're expecting that most people, and this is what's been shown in the trials, are going to get a little bit of fatigue, some muscle aches. They may have a day or two of low-grade temperature. Some reported a headache. A few also reported some nausea. But most of the symptoms had completely resolved within 2 days. So whenever you get this vaccine, you're going to want to probably make sure that you've got 2 days off following it, which for most fire departments works out well. If you're on a 24/48 schedule, get it literally the morning after you finish your shift. That way you've got 2 days to recover before coming back to work. The vast majority of the people enrolled in the clinical trials who developed these kinds of reactions were able to return to work after about 2 days, if they missed work at all. Most of them didn't even take any time off. This is not you getting infected with the coronavirus. This is actually a good thing. This is your immune system is recognizing that there's an invader and is mounting a response. And so all of that is simply mounting a response. However, very quickly your body realizes that there's really no sustained assault occurring. There's not an infection. There's just this abnormal protein present in your system. And that's why it passes so quickly, as your body very quickly recognizes it, responds to it, begins producing antibodies to fight it, and then quickly goes, the fight's over before it even started. And so that's why all your symptoms disappear fairly quickly. So getting this kind of side effect profile is actually a good thing. It means that your body did the right thing. So let's talk a little bit about the safety of these. And we kind of already did a little bit. But I wanted to talk specifically about the two vaccines. So the Moderna vaccine had roughly 33,000 people enrolled in this phase 3 clinical trial that just completed. They came up with a 94.1 effective rate. 94.1% effective rate. There were 196 people enrolled who ended up getting coronavirus out of those 33,000. 185 of those were in the placebo. And none of the folks in the vaccine component of that trial got seriously ill. So this provided significant protection for the people, and it also seemed to have lessened the disease as well. Pfizer, also 95% effective. They had, of course, people getting infected with the virus on both arms of the trial. However, none of the people that got infected with the coronavirus after getting the vaccine developed serious illness either. So very, very, very strong results. These processes haven't had to be stopped or paused at all for any adverse reactions or anything like that. So they seem to be extremely safe, and they seem to be effective. One thing we don't know is how long these vaccines are going to provide immunity for. We won't know that until we literally have time under our belt to see how long the antibodies that our body produces stick around. We know that the antibodies from an active infection don't stick around very long. We're thinking on the order of a few months. And it may end up being, as we get more years under our belt with this virus, that this turns into, we get our yearly coronavirus vaccine just like we do with our flu vaccine every year. There are still several other clinical trials ongoing. The big ones are Johnson & Johnson. It's currently in a phase 3 trial. It's also awaiting results. It is not one of the mRNA vaccines, and they hope to have results published by the end of the year. And then after that, they should be able to apply for emergency use authorization, assuming the results are what they're hoping. AstraZeneca just recently published the results of its phase 3 trial. However, it's been called into question somewhat because there's some confusion over the results. It looks like there were some protocol errors. And so rather than stopping the trial, they continued the trial, but it produced some confusing results. Literally, people who got one dose of the vaccine, it was 90% effective. However, people who got 2 doses of the vaccine, it was only 60% effective. And it turns out that the folks who were getting the lower dose, that was actually not supposed to have occurred. They were all supposed to have been getting two doses. And so we don't really know what to make of the results, such that AstraZeneca just announced that they're actually going to do a separate phase 3 trial on specifically comparing the low dose to the high dose intentionally this time. Novavax also has another one that's currently enrolling in phase 3, which means the results are months away at best. A lot of other vaccines are still in development. However, they are, for the most part, still in the safety trials. They're not yet to the phase 3 to see if it actually works. But that's kind of where things are. Several other places have already approved vaccines, China and Russia. However, the vaccines that were approved there are not going to be coming to the United States, and there's some serious safety questions about it because of how quickly things went through and how they got approved before they even had our equivalent of phase 3 ongoing. They basically got approved once they were discovered to not harm people. But didn't really have any, effectiveness, data to go off of. So my stance on all this has changed over the last couple of weeks because I'll be honest, I initially was somewhat hesitant about the mRNA vaccines because it's so brand new. As this data has come out and as I've done more research, the technology that they use to develop these mRNA vaccines is not necessarily new technology. Like I said, it was originally developed back in the early 2000s to fight the last SARS. We've since been using it for some immune therapy, specifically for cancer patients, with good effect, etc. So we've been using the technology, just not on this large of a scale. If you'd asked me, 4 weeks ago, what are you going to do, Doc? I would have said, I might wait until, we had some people actually getting the mRNA vaccines because I was a little hesitant about it. I can tell you now, after personally looking through the data and talking to other people and doing some research into this, I'll be at the front of the line. I have no hesitation whatsoever in getting the vaccine myself, getting it to my 6-year-old daughter, getting it to my wife, my mom and dad as well. I think these vaccines are going to be very effective. I think that they have been put through the ringer with far more scrutiny in a short period of time than I think most other vaccines have ever gone through. So I really do think that these are going to be safe. I think they're going to be effective. And I think that they are at least going to be a foundation for us moving forward to develop vaccines that hopefully will provide long-term immunity from this. I'm going to put my contact information up at the bottom of this, so please feel free to reach out to me with any questions you've got. I'm always happy to try and answer what I can, and if I can't, I'll see what I can do as far as finding somebody who can. Thanks, stay safe, and wear a mask.